Yeah. Hi guys. Hi Rude. Hi everyone. Yeah, Ed Grimwood. I'm going to do hopefully a presentation that will kind of strike an accord with what you're talking about, Howard, Nick. Just recently completed a very successful data migration project with Zilio as our vendor, and it was very much a collaborative process. So the presentation I'm going to run through is talking about the kind of 8 key hurdles of data migration projects that are kind of notoriously difficult, and how we worked through those kind of 8 key hurdles together, what we did well and what we didn't do so well, if you like, and then just some of the kind of takeaways at the end. So that's from my perspective. Like I said, I am an independent contractor at the moment. I have both been employed as a project manager, so I've got kind of over 20 years of experience now in multiple fields, you know what I mean? And so the last project that I worked with Zilio on was for a big pharmaceutical company. So hopefully some of that will like I say, strike an accord. But please, when we get to it, if you've got any questions as we go along, there's quite a bit of data in it, if you like. So just shout at me if there's something you wanted to know a bit more detail of. That's it from me, Rude, at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, actually, it's on to you for your presentation. So you can just share your screen, and then
okay, just give me now.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome.
2 seconds. I've just got to get my screen up. I've got 2 screens going. Okay. All right, so good. So very quickly then, just wanted to briefly introduce myself. Ed Grimwood. I'm currently project manager working independently. What I was going to talk to you about is a little bit about the brief of what my project entailed, how we overcome these 8 hurdles of data migration projects, and then, like I say, a small takeaway about what I would suggest are the key lessons we learned over the last 12 months. Zilio asked me as a guest today, and I'm very pleased to come here and kind of just collaborate with them, because it was so successful, and we found them such a partner that I thought I'm more than happy to kind of pass on that good news and that share on like I said, a notoriously difficult projects. Okay, so this is me, 20 managers, circa years, managed application infrastructure and data migration projects. I would suggest for me, over those 20 years, data migration projects have been the most difficult. And as you can see, in a number of different industries there, aerospace, and the one I'm talking about at the moment is the pharmaceutical industry, which has a massive amount of compliance and audit ability. So the data migration was even more critical from that GXP compliance side of things. So what I thought I'd do is just quickly set the scene, just a little bit of the content of the project brief, as we call it. I was hired. They were just separating. The big piece here is the company was just separating away from their parent company. So I was hired to look after the migration of all their clinical data from their parent system, which in this instance was LiveLink 9.7.1 to be specific. It was antiquated. It was clunky. It had lots and lots of problems with it. And we did quite a big piece ourselves internally within our own company to see if we had the skill sets and the ability to do the migration ourselves. And basically it came down to the actual system and our experience. We did not have that. So therefore we went into a formal tender process to hire a data migration expert who could migrate from LiveLink, who had the specific skill set of LiveLink in this instance, but also to the Sharepoint Online, which we class as a new document management system from the company that has split away. And Zilio was successful from the offset. They delivered on everything they promised, if you like, every time. They met with the timescales. They attended all of the sessions. They answered all of our questions, our queries from that process with efficiency, and kind of we felt that they were the ones that wanted this the most as well, and so we got off to a good start before we started. So a couple of the other bits of the brief then, we had very key timescales, if you like. We had a TSA agreement we needed to migrate within 12 months, and actually we didn't hire Zilio until 6 months into that 12 months. So we had a critical timescale. We had a large volume of data, circa 13 terabytes of data, and we needed not just the data. I think you touched on it, Howard, earlier. We needed the metadata, very specific to this, and the security permissions. So and they were able to, with their skill sets and their tools, to promise that they could do that. So So then basically now the body of my presentation. So what I propose, I was going to go through kind of the key 8 hurdles, the main hurdles that are known within the within data migration projects, and then just say kind of be what are pros and cons of how we manage this, if you like. So one of the key ones you probably guys know is your poor knowledge of that source data. If you don't know your data, then you're in trouble when you migrate the other end. Missing information, misspellings, erroneous data, all of that kind of thing is a problem. So it's absolutely vital to get to grips early with kind of your source data. So what did we do well? So as a project team, we specifically had 2 full-time BAs looking at our data well in advance of the migration. I think that was massive. These BAs were dedicated to getting under the skin of all of the data, engaging with the teams, and doing a lot of work with those. We held workshops and discovery sessions. The BAs led those with all of the different business teams. So in effect, the company had lots and lots of different areas within its business. We made sure we'd met with every single one of those and did some good engagement process and tried to understand their data very early on. The other piece that I think is quite important, and at the time it was our BAs also, before we'd brought Zillow on board, had good working knowledge. I would say they were experts, but they understood Sharepoint Online and knew kind of what they were getting from that side of things. So it was important when we were having these sessions to explain a little bit and give them some understanding of what the new target system. But that wasn't critical. It was just it was a nice to have. Like I said, we did conducted a lot of upfront analysis on the data, and we were keen to present kind of where we knew changes were going to be made based on the old system. So LiveLink, you could embed basically. You could have 500, 600, 700 characters as a title of a document. You couldn't do that in the new system. So it's knowing what its limitations were and understanding a little bit around that would help before you kind of got going. What didn't we do? So well, I guess at this stage against this hurdle, we didn't know all of the limitations of the system. So there were scenarios that we found that weren't possible that we were hoping for. And for example, we needed to run a script post-migration at certain points to lock all of the metadata. So when it migrated over, the metadata was there, but then the new user potentially could amend the data itself. So we needed to run a script to ensure that it kind of locked and time stamped all that data. So then when we got audited, we could say all of this data at this point came over and was there and present and hadn't been doctored. That was quite an important piece. So whilst we did know quite a bit up front, there were still kind of limitations. Like I said, please shout out if you've got any queries. I will go through this quite quickly because I'm just conscious there's a lot here. So second one, another big one that is a hurdle that often trips people up are constraints in computer systems and how information is hidden in obscure places throughout the kind of your systems. This would obviously result in incomplete, inaccurate information being transferred during the migrations. Often you discover this data really late in the day, and performing that analysis through in the earliest signs would really help what you're doing. So what did we do well in this space? So what we were very keen to do is sign off with each business unit of the migrated field and metadata. So we showed them what they would be getting. We talked them through saying, here's what you had, here's what we understand from your requirements, what you need, and we would show them a mocked up a system setup of what the data would look like when it was migrated, so they could get a feel of we're not used to it. That, and I did hear again one of you guys talking earlier about they're only used to one thing. Change is always a bit of a problem for companies, but we made sure that they understood, look, this is what Sharepoint Online, there's a lot of great stuff here, but there will be some things that you liked in the old system that aren't there, and it's understanding that and making sure you get kind of the buy-in. Big one as well was bite-sized chunks. 13 terabytes in one go was just not feasible. So we made sure we did it by business unit. We worked it in an agile methodology with Zillow, and we took a business unit and worked out a 3-week sprint. So week 1 we did the kind of the engagement workshops, made sure they knew what their data was going to look like, and they had to sign off that this was coming over. Week 2 we did a kind of an alpha migration load, and then they would UAT it, sign it off, and then day 3 would do all the kind of week 3 we would do all of the delta sync and then cut over and make them live in that system. So we had different parts of the business over kind of a 4 or 5 month period, we had sections of business that were on the new system and some were still on the old system, but anyone that had shares across the two areas were able to access both areas, if you like. So yeah, we bite the chunk and then empowered the project team and the business leads. And I think that's important, is that any deviations in process, we, the project team, were able to approve, but also take to the business to say, look, you did have it like this, you would have it like this, and making sure that they had the ability to sign that off, because otherwise that would delay the kind of projects. What didn't go so well in this area? Yeah, really important, lack of access to the full set of data. This was really struggled, even with those 9 months of BA work and help. We still didn't have all of the data, and so data was still being discovered. I don't really know how you ever overcome that. It is very difficult. Data will always come out of the woodwork. The closer you get to saying you'll no longer have access to the system, all of a sudden empowers people's mind. But we did lots of comms, we did lots of work, we did these workshops, but yet still, and be prepared that there will still be data that will come out. And of course, because these are critical clinical data, we didn't have the ability to say, sorry guys, you can't have it. Do you know what I mean? So we had to kind of adapt a little bit, and in the end we end up having an extra final kind of iteration that we hadn't planned for. But that's one of those things that I guess it's just be aware of, rather than you can really fully plan for it. So number 3 hurdle, lack of an integrated process. I think most businesses suffer from this. Lots of historical IT and pieces. Data migrations typically involve disparate sets of systems and technologies. Classic example is pretty much everyone still uses spreadsheets somewhere along the line to document specifications. These are prone to human errors. Do you know what I mean? And so how did we try and overcome this? Well, what did we do well? So I think firstly, we chose Xilio as our partner. They were excellent. They had super understanding of LiveLink, doing it kind of regularly, and they had great understanding of SharePoint and what it looks like. They were able to produce these kind of one version of the truth for us and make it kind of the main source for target to destination. And we were able to share that obviously with the customer, and we could see where things were going wrong. And so Xilio were able to overcome the lack of integrated systems by what their tooling and with their ability to kind of have this one kind of a version of the truth. But what didn't go so well in this space was a classic. So when we first brought Xilio on, we thought we were going to allow them to be able to plug straight into our parent system and look at the data there, but this got quite quickly blocked from a data protection and security. So in the end, the project had to stand up kind of an additional infrastructure, and we had to take the data that we believed was ours from this infrastructure into our own infrastructure landing zone, of which we were then allowed to provide Xilio access to. So they weren't allowed at the main source. We had to, so in effect, we almost had to do 2 hops. We had to do a hop from the current LiveLink system to a kind of stand-up version of LiveLink, and then we were able to give Xilio access to that LiveLink, who then were able to do all our migration, all our target, and all of that good side. So that, of course, was a classic lack of integrated processes and stopped us actually giving Xilio what they needed. We had to overcome that. We lost a good few months worth of time in our migration process due to no fault of Xilio. It was just based on security. But obviously our designs, and we'd done all our upfront designs in our kind of migration process, this all had to be revisited. So again, think about that lack of integrated processes as an early stage would be a kind of key takeaway.
Ed?
Yes.
Maybe to add to that, I see that a lot in conversations with prospects that IT or compliance and security are coming late to the table instead of early on. When you have when you have a good feeling of you're moving forward with a vendor, make sure that you have compliance and security added to the conversations as early as possible to maybe avoid things like this.
I don't know if I've lost you.
You lost me, as in?
Now you, sorry, yeah, you were saying that. Sorry, I completely lost you then.
Didn't you hear what I say?
Yeah, I think it's just coming up on my screen. Bad network quality. Sorry. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think. In the Xilio side, assuming you can still hear me okay, Rudy, yeah, so it was slightly different for us, wasn't it? Because our designs were based my company had approved our designs, but it was the parent company that blocked us. So we had IT agreement up front, and we had security agreement up front. It was the parent company that then came to the party and said, by the way, we're blocking you. So we had engaged and done that bit up front, but it was because of the difficulty we were splitting companies, we then got hit by this second layer. But yeah, it's a really good point, I think. Do you know what I mean? We've got that integration and bringing security on board early is absolutely with data migrations.
Yep.
I'm just checking you can still hear me fine, Ruud. Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah, doing great.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. So quickly on to number 4, inability to validate specification. Basically, this is what this is saying is while you may have a good understanding of your source data, it won't necessarily result in kind of modifying what's going to happen into that target system as it kind of and you can get critical misses of data that you need, and specifically data metadata was a big one for us. They were very, very keen on some of the versions of documents we had were like we had 1,000 revisions of documents, and so there's so much metadata that spanned with that. It was vital that we knew we were going to get all of the fields we needed in that. So what did we do? Well, project team, we set up the target system. This is important, actually. We set the target system up early. Zelio did a really early manual migration for us without the kind of transformation rules, but just to get the data across there and have an early, like we talked about early sight of the target source, its usability, and making sure it met with the customer requirements, and also early sight into some of those metadata challenges I talked about with version history. So we did get some really good stuff by doing a very quick manual migration. But what didn't do so well is, of course, we didn't prove all those transformation rules as early as we would have liked to, and therefore, when we did get to some of the later sprints, so our first sprint went really well, but our second sprint was far more complex, and we had to add in new challenges and new rules. So it worked. I would say we probably overcame that by kind of 60% of it, but there was another 40% that kind of we didn't do so well in that space. So just thinking about how you validate again early, these things up front when you're building it are really important. So failure to validate the implementation. So yeah, if you don't explore the scenarios, as mentioned there, all of those scenarios in the testing process, then you do run the risk of coming down the line of not tested and failing in the test scenarios. Here, for example, what we did really well, we did a big volume data set. And again, I think our very first test was of circa 2 terabytes. So a fifth of all data we did in our first test scenario, which is great. We did a big volume test. We got some excellent timings. We got to know how the system performed. Brilliant. But our failing, I think, in this scenario is the data subset we took whilst with volume wasn't a particularly good cross-section of all the business cases. It was one particular business area, and therefore one business area were very different from how another business area of all their data. So what I would have said in that, what I would do differently is I would take a volume, but I would take multiple kind of business units for data, if you like, a subset of each of those to maybe make up the 2 terabytes or that kind of size test. But at least you've got a subset of all the different businesses data, and that would have given us a bit more of a kind of feeling of, right, this is what some of the failures we're going to occur and some of the pieces that we have. So we overcame that, but again, it just delayed some of the kind of the go lives, and we had to fix some more post migration.
Yeah. Ed, Chris is asking a question. Do you have any issues classifying the data? Did you need different migration rule sets for different types of data?
So are you talking about, Chris, in terms of confidential, highly confidential, that type of thing, or are you talking about, give me an example of you talking about classifying?
So different types of data might have different metadata associated with it. So our drawings, for example, might have different data to our policies and procedures, or our just general business documents.
Yeah. So it's a really good point. So the clinical data had pretty much everything, as you could imagine. It had PDFs, it had Excels that were versioned, it had drawings, it had lots of videos associated that are also versioned as well. So we had lots and lots of different file types, and again the classification of what's confidential, highly confidential. So we did have that, but we knew those subsets early, and we had discussed that with Zelio, and Zelio's tools were able to bring all of that. So incomplete. We didn't have any failures in terms of data types or classification that wouldn't come across. But again, that came from that early evaluation.
Yeah. So the kind of follow on to that is really whether or not when you did the migrations, did you migrate one group of data at a time and then go back? So maybe it was the videos, do all the videos first, and then go back and do all the drawings, or something.
No,
like that.
We actually, as I briefly touched on, we did it by business unit, and that business unit itself would have a span of all different types of data. So we didn't need to kind of just pull out, say, all of the documents or all of the PDFs or all of the Excel. We were able to do a business unit, whatever that consisted of, in one go, if you like. So there was no issues with the way the migration tool performed or how that data came across. It was all able to be validated post migration, if you like. And I touched on it briefly. We did lots and lots of validation, and because we couldn't afford any lost data. We had certain non-conformances. We just needed to get that signed off by the business. But yeah, classification wise, no, we didn't encounter any issue, and that's a credit to Zilio tools and their process and how they run the migration.
Okay, thanks.
What is the background of your question, Chris? Why? What is the background?
We stored lots of different documents, document types, and it was really just understanding whether or not we might have to do different data rules, migration rules for different elements of data, or whether we take, like you did, a department at a time or a business at a time, and migrate all of their data in one go, and whether that complexity of building those rules into a single data migration tool is different compared to building something that's just going to cope with one type of data and then moving on to the next type.
Yeah. So the basic answer is no. It really doesn't matter.
Thanks ever so much for your help.
Right.
Okay, great.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks for the question, Chris. Like I said, please shout out. I'm happy, and Rude obviously has got the system. So here's that piece I just talked about, that valuation of those final results. Problems can occur in the testing stage where only users see the actual data once it's loaded in the system. It's really important, this one. Again, we were able to demonstrate look and feel to the end user we talked about. We got the buy-in from the user, so we had UAT before and during the migration process. So once we migrate, we got them to UAT. Before we got them to UAT, basically, again, this is basic project management, to be fair, but get the business and the areas buy-in all the way through, and therefore then they kind of work with you rather than against you. And a big one there, multiple layers of sign-off. So Zilio, we did a classic ETL, extract, transform, load. At each process, we would provide a document that would then Zilio would migrate, and we would then check it off. Zilio would provide us their outputs. We would check it. Project team did it, and then we did the business. So we had 3 layers at each stage for sign off. And as I said, because this is clinical data, and we're talking lots and lots of versions, lots of history that is GXP compliant, we have to provide for up to 20 years. We couldn't afford to lose anything, so we had really stringent sign offs. But a lot of it was automated. A lot of it was done kind of by the process by Zilio on automation. We set some automation. Then we did lots of spot checking, lots of other processes. So really important to think about that. And again, not just take the word for it. It's obviously ensuring that you've got a bit of everything in there. So what didn't go so well in that area? I guess, and this is always one of the difficulties with any project, is business buy-in. As I mentioned, we did get buy-in in the UAT, but it's getting the correct set of business end users. Often the business themselves are busy doing their day job, and you've got a key timeline. So we got them to do some of it, but in the timescales you needed them to do it, it can be very challenging. And yeah, just lack of general business time to support the project as they're doing their day job is always a difficult one. But that's not necessarily unique to data migration projects. But when you're kind of continuing a rollout of data migrations, you need them there and then, if you like. Otherwise, your data's building up behind you. One of our problems is that there was so much data that's created on a daily basis in one of these business units that if we delayed by 12 hours, China came online or US came online, and they were generating more data that we had to do as a delta. So, and therefore, if we were waiting for business to sign something off, we were building up this big backlog of data that was still going into the live system. We weren't able to put hard freezes in, so it kind of added to the difficulty. So, yeah, evaluation and business buying kind of really key. So only a couple more slides for me, you'll probably be pleased to hear. So last couple, lack of collaboration. It's been mentioned that migrations, often different technologies, cases, internal employees, external contractors, some of these may not even be in the same location, working in silos, all of that good stuff in all projects, but really you do feel the pinch in data migrations. What do we do well? So for me, we did well. We daily stand-ups, and we had a daily stand-up with Zilio and myself. So Zilio had a project manager and myself, and we had every single morning without fail. We just had 15 minutes, and where we went through what we're doing, what they're doing, where it's collaboration, and that worked brilliantly. To be fair, we did it in an agile methodology with these 12 sprints rather than doing it in one big bang. That worked really well as well. For me, yeah, Zilio as a resource, it didn't feel like they were a vendor. For me, we were very much one team, and because of that, we were able to have that transparency and trust that sometimes kind of it's an us and them. Do you know what I mean? There's no one was looking to try and blame anyone else. We hit an issue, bang, we'd work together. We had some really clever BAs on our side that would work with Zilio's great minds in the data migration side, and that just worked really well. And I think the agreed platform is important as well when you're working, especially we were all working from home, no one was really in the offices. We basically set Zilio up on our local LAN, and we use MS Teams for all our collaboration sessions, all of our sharing. Obviously it's got SharePoint that sits behind it, so all our documentation sharing, everything like that. So agreeing that platform and how you manage it, and I don't think in that space I would say we didn't do anything badly from a collaboration. It was genuinely a truly collaborative project. And the final one, inappropriate use of expertise. So this is where you're not using the experts correctly, or do you know what I mean, or not getting them in at the right stage. And I think this probably a big tick in our boxes of the company was we realised that we didn't have that expertise. We know we needed to go. We didn't just try and muddle through it. Like we said, we had some very talented guys on our side, but they weren't talented in the migration from a LiveLink to a SharePoint Online. And so we quickly went out to vendor, and I think, look, Zilio were from the offset were brilliant. They lived what they said on there. I know this is a Zilio, but I still keep in touch with Rude after the project's finished, if you like, and that's a sign of how much I enjoyed the project, how much I enjoyed working with Zilio. A big one, listen to the experts. These guys knew what they were talking about. We didn't try and teach them how to do certain things, and that is a classic in projects. I've always found is you get people trying to give advice on areas that's not inside their kind of their sphere of excellence, and therefore when Zilio told us this is what we recommend, we listened to them, we did it. And again, empowering the project team to support that data migration. Yeah, we were able to manage outside noise. We let Zilio get on with what they needed to do, and the proof was in the pudding. We delivered on time. We delivered without zero conformances, and the business now have separated, and they are using that data. So I couldn't praise Zilio enough in that space as a vendor that came in. So yeah, that's really it for me. Last one then, very quickly, is my key takeaways in all of those. I'll just quickly whiz through them. Data analysis, absolutely critical up front. Don't wait. Get those guys embedded. Get working on it. You might feel 9 months ahead of time feels a long time, but that time soon gets eaten up. Get the migration experts involved. Get them in and embed them as part of your core team. Don't just use them for a final piece. Prove the process really early if you can, and use large sets of cross-set of data. Daily touch points work brilliantly. Collaborate, again, that's a big one for me. Don't hide those problems. We had a number of issues, and likewise Zilio came up with a number of issues. Do you know what I mean? But they didn't try and hide anything from us, and therefore we worked with them rather than do that, and trust the experts. So look, that's it for me. It was probably hopefully I haven't gone too much over time. Rude, happy to answer any questions or post anything. Is there anything anyone would like to discuss?